welcome back. I have another exciting speaker for you at Hybrid Cloud Day. I'm thrilled to introduce our good friend Ben, Principal AWS Technologist at Cloudar. Ben's an AWS hero and an AWS ambassador, and we really appreciate you for joining us here today.
Thank you for having me. Like you said, my name is Ben. I work for a company called Cloudar. We are a premier consulting partner with a focus solely on AWS. So that means that we try to be experts in like anything that's AWS or AWS related, and only that. So we have a focus on that, and that does mean we do like reselling, and we do consulting, both like short-term and long-term, but we also do like full managed services, like end-to-end management of solutions for our customers.
Awesome. Tell us a little bit about the role that you have there.
Well, I've been at this company for 8 years now, so it has changed a little bit over time. But currently, I spend like roughly a third of my time working at a client, like at a public sector client that we have, where I'm part of a cloud enablement team. I've been doing that with that client for roughly 5 years, which is like a very nice contrast with like the other 2/3, where I'm doing more short-term engagements. Like one of the the half of the other third of the other 2/3 is more internally focused, which is like short-term consulting, conversations with like our cloud ops team of our MSP, sometimes just diving deep on new AWS services. So that can be like days full of meetings, or it can be days like just writing documentation or examples of proof of concepts, things like that. And then lastly, it's like similar to what I'm doing right now, is like more externally focused. There's a very big AWS community, and it's important for me and for us to engage with that. So that can be classroom training. I'm an AWS authorized instructor. Can be speaking at meetups, can be writing blog posts, conversations like this one, which has been like all be very rewarding. I've been able to become an AWS ambassador, which is being part of a community of like technical experts that work for AWS partners, and also become an AWS hero, which is a similar community of AWS experts who like carry that out outwards, and like try to engage with that community and like tell what we're doing and how this is working for us.
Gotcha. So to recap that, you work for an awesome partner. You get to work with all of the AWS technologies you want to. You are an AWS trainer, an AWS ambassador, an AWS hero, and you get to do fun stuff like this for the community. That sounds like a dream job right there.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
I've got lucky.
With these talks, what we're really focusing on is, issues related to managing infrastructure in a hybrid model. With the different types of customers that you get to work with, especially on the public sector side, I'm imagining that you've run into some of those issues a lot. Tell all of us a little bit what you see as the top challenges in that area.
Yeah, I think it's like also very interesting that working with both public sector companies and non-public sector companies, that we see that there are some things that are very general and generic and like happening everywhere, and some things where it's like problems that are not only but mostly happening at like public sector, because there are some very like specific challenges that they might have, right? One thing that like you could call extreme seasonality, which means that like whether you're like a school or a government website or you do something with taxes, there will be like one day a year or even like one day every 3 years where everybody's going to visit your website, and the rest of the year nobody cares about your website at all. Which becomes very challenging because now like if your website is unavailable on that day, everybody will also know about it, and like that's
I would imagine elections fit into that bucket as well.
Sorry?
I would imagine that elections fit into that bucket as well.
Exactly. Like that's like definitely one of those that is like every 2 years, every 4 years maybe, where like we worked with clients where it's like, this is super important for us. Like whatever happens, this needs to be online at that day. So and then that's like even more like that happens outside of public sector as well, but like that like big shift of like now nobody is visiting our website, or like 1 or 2 people, to like now like the whole country is visiting our website, is a very interesting challenge. But there's also like more generic things, like where everything is becoming more and more digital. There's a digital transformation that is still happening to this day, and that's going to continue to happen over the next years. And that also like shifts how we work on things, right? Where Like if you look back 5 years ago, like all the things we were looking at in cloud were like very service specific. Like we
Right.
wanted to have a service that like solves our queue problem or our search problem. Whereas if you look at like what is happening now, more and more companies are looking at what are the things that span our whole cloud estate. Like it serves like guard duty in organizations, IAM Identity Center, Security Hub, like all those things that are looking at this is everything that you're running inside of the cloud. Um, and this is how those things tie together.
Gotcha. So if we look at both the things that are specific to public sector, like that huge scalability at certain points of time, but then also the things that apply more generally to everyone, how do you look at the AWS portfolio and the products that you have to bring to bear for these customers to solve that problems? How do you look at those pieces and figure out how to put them together? Like, what do you use as your criteria to tell customers this is the way that we're going to solve that specific problem?
One of the ways that I like to think about it is being very much think about like a cloud first strategy, which like works like as a macro thing where you say like if we're going to build something, how would we build this on the cloud? Like how would we do it? How would it fit together? Can we do it? Is this the best place to run it? And having that as like the default to start with is very useful. And then also like on a more like micro level, looking within like that whole portfolio, like which services will give us the most of those cloud advantages, like less heavy lifting, less operational overhead, fast experimentation, like where can we go as fast as possible and like have as much as possible being managed by that cloud provider. You could also call that like having like a more serverless mindset in there, where you look at like what are the services that give us like as little overhead as possible, right? Like we want to be as close as possible to that business value there.
I know that there are both in AWS just and in general, I know that there are more and more of those services that are being offered that go up the stack, that offer to be more prescriptive or more opinionated or provide more services. Are there any specific services that you look at that make a whole lot of sense for customers when they're starting to talk about that? Because I mean, we could start at the bottom, right? We could start with the infrastructure, we could start with the orchestration, or we could start at the top with how do we how do we put these things and allow customers to talk to them directly? Is there anything that really makes sense to start with from your perspective?
I think there are like two big parts in here, like from like an application specific view. Like one thing that we've seen that's pretty successful is looking at, for example, at CloudFront or API Gateway, where you say like, this is like our entry point to our application. This is where we have like the most pain maybe. Like if you're like still running things on premises and you have like limited internet connectivity, or you might run into like things there, then having CloudFront as like a layer in front of there and saying like, okay, this is where we're going to start, have that caching layer in place, have all those extra features that come with CloudFront in place, like WAF or like Lambda at Edge, where we can do already some processing, things like that, is a very nice place to start. It will like enable us also to like move things behind there. But the other side is also true from like an organization perspective, looking at where will our things land, right? What's our landing zone? How are we going to like migrate things piece by piece? Do we need like certain standards in place? And like again, we mentioned organizations, things like Control Tower can also help there. So I think like both of things together make it very feasible to like move piece by piece to the cloud.
Gotcha. So one of the things that I like about doing projects and then finishing a project and then moving forward is that we always get to learn from what we finished, right? We get to look back at it and we get to figure out which of these are things we had to build for a customer, and then which of these are patterns that we can recognize and be able to use with future customers. So as you go through this process of helping customers figure out what works, are there any patterns that you found?
Yeah, I think like the main thing that like stood out to me is that we're not doing migrations or modernizations as a big bang anymore. So we're not thinking of it like we build something and like that's our infrastructure and that stays like that for 4 years, and then in 4 years we look at it again and build something completely new. It's a very much organic thing where we move things, not necessarily piece by piece, but like the move is not the destination, right? So we, especially like use things like CloudFront, where you're like, okay, we move that first piece and we move everything behind it. And then we look at how does our application behind that fit together. Maybe we started with moving everything to EC2 or Elastic Beanstalk, but then we're like, maybe there's something new out there. Like we can use App Runner or ECS or Lambda, and we can look at like what are the specific pieces that we get the most value out of doing that. Like which things are in our critical path, and maybe we can like one thing we've done with a customer is seeing like this is like our critical piece of infrastructure or critical web page. Like this is that one thing that has to be up that specific day all of the time, and like start running that out to a static website on S3, and then use CloudFront origin failover to be able to move between that and different versions and be certain that whatever happens, like there's always a backup version that's also running. And without us having to configure anything, just like be able to move to that if something goes wrong. Like it's very powerful there, and we don't have to do that for everything. We can do it like on a pod by pod or a piece by piece place.
Yeah, I think that message that modernization is a continuous process, just like we use continuous processes at a very low level. I think across the entire life cycle of apps, platforms, or even businesses, that modernization ends up needing to be a continuous process. As customers start to tackle this, as they start to look at where they are and where they want to go, and kind of move away from that big bang of migration and then sit around and let everything get old and then migration again. Do you have any last thoughts or any recommendations for the audience as they go through that process?
Yeah, I think there are a few takeaways. I think one of them is like things that we're talking about here, like they have names. We're not like making them up here. Right. Like that process of taking one piece and then only changing that piece and modernizing that way is commonly referred to as the strangler fig pattern. So you can like read about that online. There's also services there that help with that. The AWS Migration Hub Refactor Spaces is built for doing that across an organization. Secondly, like I mentioned CloudFront before, it's a very powerful product to start with, whether you're having everything already in the cloud or you're starting from on-premises or you have a mix there. It's a very good way to start splitting things up without having to change your domain. But I think my main takeaway is what you already said a little bit, is that this is a continuous process, right? Like everything we use will start getting better, or will keep getting better. We'll keep getting new features. So I have to stop thinking about like this is like a one thing that happens at one time and now it's legacy. It's something that's continuous. Like we keep modernizing things, just like we do with software. We keep adding new features and keep using new frameworks and new things that our libraries provide us. We have to think of the cloud in the same way, where we take advantage of all the new things that are coming out and like all the improvements and all the economies of scale that AWS gives us. We have to keep an eye on that and keep taking advantage of that and keep moving with that.
And I would say that that's one of the places where AWS loves working with partners like you, because our job is obviously we solve the problem that customers have right now, right? I mean, there is a problem, the cloud can solve it. AWS wants to be part of that solution, but the customer is also going to have a next problem and a next problem and a next problem. They're going to have something else that they want to solve for, and making sure that the products that we're offering stay ahead of where the customers want to be, I think is part of that ecosystem where the partners play really well. And so, thank you for your efforts on behalf of the customers, but also on behalf of the products that you're using. We want to make sure that we're as much a part of that as the products or as the customers.
Well, thank you for having me, and also thank you for like taking that feedback and like allowing me to be lazy from time to time. So like, this is something I don't want to do. Like, please give me a solution for that and for my customers.
Awesome. Well, that's great, Ben. Thank you so much. Hopefully these insights will help many customers on their migration journeys. And a big thanks to everyone in the audience. We really appreciate you joining us for AWS Hybrid Cloud Day.